Tina's first love woke up after being in a coma for 6 years. My wife left me to take care of another man for months, and I was diagnosed with ALS, my life now on a countdown. After learning about my condition, the woman who wouldn't give me even a minute was now crying her eyes out at my bedside. Tina broke down, but I was beyond caring. When Eric called, I was about to blow out my birthday candles. Tina glared at her phone, ready to hang up, but froze at the sight of his name. She looked at me, her gaze steady and unwavering. "Ben, I'm gonna take this call. Can't it wait until after I make my wish?" "Sorry," she replied, firm and resolute. The words didn't leave my mouth. Between Eric and me, she always picked him. It's been 6 years of marriage to Tina. Our story is pretty cliché. I've never had much luck. I'm an orphan. Eric's family took me in only to kick me out because of him. My early work life landed me at a business event where my boss hinted heavily at accepting bribes. I was young and stubborn, resisted hard, and got slapped twice, leaving my ears ringing. If it weren't for Tina's unexpected appearance, that night might have ruined me. That's probably how love at first sight is, a split-second spark, leading to an obsession. Looking back, Eric and I share some facial similarities. I guess that's part of why Tina rushed into marrying me. Took me 6 years to slowly win her over. Then Eric woke up, and I realized all my efforts were for nothing. When Eric called, she wouldn't even spare a minute for my wish. I didn't blow out the candles. Through the glow, I saw the gentle smile on Tina's face, as if soothing the person on the other end of the line. We weren't far apart. I could hear everything she said. "You fell? How careless during therapy. Okay, I'll be there." Ending the call, she walked towards me, eyes filled with hesitation. "Ben, I have to step out." I played dumb. "Where to?" She didn't answer, just kissed my cheek lightly. Maybe she'd been on the balcony for too long. She carried the night's chill with her, making me want to pull back. There's something I need to do. Go to bed early. Oh, the gifts in the bedroom. I grabbed her hand. "I haven't made a wish yet. I'll make it up to you next time," she said. "I want to do it now, today," I insisted. Tina paused, slowly turning her head. She frowned slightly. "Ben, don't be difficult." I gave a sarcastic smile. "So eager to see Eric?" She watched me, slightly annoyed. "Stop taking it out on Eric." I looked down, silent. She always favored him. Tina left without another word, just a fading silhouette walking to the door. The candle burned out. The cake, sweet as it was, left a bitter taste in my mouth. I didn't expect to get a message from Tina on Instagram that night. Tina had a habit. Ever since we got married, no matter where she was, she'd always message me before coming home. I'm a light sleeper, and I never put my phone on silent. In the past, no matter how late it was, if she said she was coming home, I'd get up to make her a bowl of hot noodles or dumplings. Usually, she'd come back from a work event or a business trip. Even though it was exhausting, it felt fulfilling and happy. Having the one you love close by. But what I saw in front of me snapped me back to reality. This time, her message wasn't words but a photo. Eric was looking at Tina, smiling. Tina, not looking at the camera, was kneeling and rubbing his leg, focused. Eric looked well taken care of, not at all like someone who'd been in a hospital bed for 6 years. Then a message appeared. "Tina's dumplings are delicious." Seeing that insignificant bowl of dumplings in the photo, my fingernails dug into my flesh. Tina can't cook. I was the one who taught her how to make those dumplings. She turned around and used all the love I gave her on another man. Eric didn't need to say anything else. That photo said it all. They were happy. But I refused to let Eric get what he wanted so easily. Feelings don't disappear all at once. They fade with growing disappointment. I didn't know about Tina and Eric's past. It was only 6 months ago that I learned the whole truth. I was disappointed. I questioned her. But Tina acted like she had nothing to hide, so I believed she cared for me. But how powerful is a first love? A is always A, and B can be anyone. Eric was A and I was the anyone. Turns out, I wasn't her first love, nor could I be someone she'd never forget. The clock in the living room ticked to 3:30 a.m. No surprise, Tina hadn't come back. I let out a self-deprecating laugh. Ben, what are you still hoping for? I cleaned up the leftover cake on the table and headed upstairs. But suddenly, my legs gave out, and I fell on the stairs. The chill of the floor brought me back to that cold morning 6 months ago. The first week Eric woke up, Tina and I entered a major Cold War. My mood was terrible, my nights and days reversed, and my body started acting strange. I thought it was a minor issue, but turned out I was diagnosed with ALS. My body would gradually lose feeling until I ended up as nothing more than a bed-bound shell. If I'm lucky, I might have 2 or 3 years left, truly living up to the saying, only the good die young. When the first light of dawn came through, Tina returned. She silently hugged me from behind. That body warmth reminded me of those hands massaging Eric's legs. My stomach churned, and I wriggled, trying to get out of her embrace. But her grip tightened unexpectedly. Her voice sounded soft, like mist shrouding the distant mountains. Did I wake you up? No, I've always had trouble sleeping. Why don't you go to bed earlier? I didn't reply, and she suddenly paused with her grip. We both knew the reason deep down. After a long silence, Tina broke it first. Do you want some wontons for breakfast? I can make them. My voice turned a bit cold. No, lately just looking at wontons makes me feel sick. From behind me, Tina's voice carried a hint of tiredness. Ben, are you still upset? You're overthinking it. I got up to leave, but she held on to me. Ben, I'm married to you. But am I the one you love? I opened my mouth, but couldn't ask the question out loud. 6 months ago, after a fierce argument and the ensuing Cold War, both of us silently avoided mentioning Eric to maintain a superficial balance. For the first time, I saw Tina compromise and give in, though it was because of another man. Logically, I should have left her, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. After 6 years together, I realized I couldn't let go. But now, I'm suddenly feeling exhausted. Both of us are holding onto emotions we can neither swallow nor fully express. After a while, I answered slowly, I know. My voice was light, almost dismissive. Tina looked at me, her eyes unreadable. She suddenly pulled me close, pressing a heated, passionate kiss on my lips. But I didn't kiss her back like I used to. She bit my tongue lightly in dissatisfaction. The warmth of Eric's breath came to mind. Not being there to blow out candles and cut the cake with you yesterday was my fault. Let's find a time to make it up, she said. I turned my head aside. It's too much trouble. There's no trouble. With anything involving Eric, she always seemed to follow a pattern of giving a slap and then offering candy. After holding me for a while, she turned and went to the bathroom. Out of habit, I picked up the jacket she took off, but a necklace slipped out of it. A moon-shaped pendant. For a moment, I was stunned. I knew this necklace was a gift from Eric. I'd seen her wear it for quite a long time before I left Eric's place. Still the same, he liked his little games. Just like he used every trick to irritate and bully me in the past. I threw the necklace down the drain. Just seeing it dirted my sight. After breakfast, Tina hastily left for work. I also dressed and got ready to leave. I've been working at a design company for 4 years, and today was my last day. My illness was complicated, unpredictable when it would worsen. Could be next month, maybe I'd last till next year. Though the company wasn't big, the boss and colleagues were really nice. So when they invited me to the last team building event next week, I didn't decline. On the team building day, the boss chose a famous local Cantonese restaurant for dinner. Tina used to take me there often too. Maybe it was fate. I saw Tina and Eric there. My wife of 6 years was carefully serving food to another man. I planned to pretend I didn't see them, but Eric spotted me. Is that Ben? Her voice wasn't quiet, so my colleagues and Tina looked at me. A coworker asked, "Do you know them?" I pressed my lips together. No. You go ahead, I'll catch up. I walked over. Eric looked at me with fake surprise. Ben, what a coincidence. Long time no see, you here for a meal too? Seeing I wasn't responding, she glanced between me and Tina, then continued, but I remember you don't like Cantonese food. The food here is quite good. I used to come here with Tina often. Eric nonchalantly and naturally talked about their past. I glanced at the delicacies on the table. They were all familiar because Tina liked to order them. Tina paused, looking at me. You don't like Cantonese food? I didn't deny it. I really didn't. Compared to light Cantonese, I preferred spicy Sichuan cuisine. When we first got married, I unconsciously embraced her tastes. Over time, she assumed I enjoyed it too. But not once did she ask me directly. So Eric liked it too. I looked at her, my gaze calm. I really don't like it. Tina's face froze for a moment, looking at me as if unsure of what to say. Eric smiled faintly at me. He felt proud. But Tina didn't see it. She jokingly said to Tina, "You've been married to him for 6 years, and you don't know your husband at all." Tina looked at me and pressed her lips. I interrupted her. "Enjoy your meal." I hadn't eaten dinner, found an excuse and left. When I left, I saw the torn and hesitant expression on Tina's face. But in the end, she stayed. Nose feeling a little sore, heart seemed to have a hole, letting the wind through. It hurt. On the way home, suddenly a heavy rain started. The late autumn rain carried a deep chill. I was always afraid of the cold, and after getting sick, my immunity noticeably weakened. Within hours of getting home, I had a fever. Lying muddle-headed in bed, unpleasant memories surfaced. I was adopted by Eric's parents at 6, becoming his brother in name. Life at Eric's wasn't easy. Adoption wasn't out of love or expectation. Purely to avert Eric's misfortune. That's right, to avert disaster. Eric was sickly and frail since childhood. Eric's mom was superstitious and consulted a renowned local fortune teller. The fortune teller advised her to find a boy with a similar birth chart and keep him around Eric. The intent was to deceive ghosts and ward off disaster. Eric's mom believed it. They used their influence, found me at a nearby orphanage and brought me home. First day at Eric's, she excitedly said, "Great, now Eric can grow up healthy." Eric's mom always told me, "When trouble comes, you must shield Eric. When danger approaches, you protect Eric. If anyone bullies Eric, you fight back for him. You should be grateful." After Eric's accident, people didn't blame the driver or Eric's drunk driving. They blamed me for not stopping the disaster. I woke up drenched in cold sweat, realizing that all of it was in the past. "Ben, you've made it through," I told myself. Pain can make you feel so vulnerable. Late at night, Tina's voice pulled me back from the memories again. "Ben?" I was too weak to answer. She came over, put her cool hand on my forehead, and said, "Ben, you have a fever." "I took some medicine," I replied. "You're burning up. Let's go to the hospital," she insisted, a bit worried. I tightened my grip on the blanket, refusing. "I don't want to go." "Don't be stubborn, you know I don't like hospitals," I said. Tina fell silent, looking at me slightly annoyed. "I'm really okay. The fever's down quite a bit," I assured her, glancing at the scattered pill bottles on the bedside table. I had ripped the labels off the bottles, trying to convince her it was just cold medicine. "Cold medicine shouldn't be mixed," she sighed. "It helps me get better faster," I said quietly. "Why didn't you call me? Weren't you with Eric?" I asked in a soft voice. She adjusted the blanket, sounding a little displeased. "Why do you keep bringing him up? Ben, Eric won't change our relationship." "What is our relationship now?" I suddenly asked. "We're married, of course." I asked her another question. "Do you remember the promise you made on our 3rd anniversary?" Her expression was a bit blank. She didn't remember. Of course, it was just something she said to please me. "You promised we'd never divorce. If Eric hadn't had the accident, would you have married him?" She looked at me quietly for a while and answered, "Ben, hypotheticals don't mean anything." The mood dropped. I turned my back to her, wrapping myself tighter in the blanket, feeling something inside me snap. I thought to myself, I know the answer now. Since the day I found out about Tina and Eric's past, I've been afraid. But 6 years of marriage gave me some confidence. I consoled myself, thinking everyone has a past. It just so happens hers was with Eric. But I overestimated myself. Maybe I've been let down too many times. I'm not as heartbroken now. This cold hit hard, dragging on for over a week. Maybe out of guilt, Tina stayed home with me the whole week. Occasionally, I'd hear her talking to Eric on the phone, though she tried to keep it from me. Even by my side, she never fully let go of Eric. The weather wasn't great, but we finally got a sunny day. I was out in the garden enjoying the sun. Spring seemed close. I suddenly got the urge, Tina, let's travel again in the spring. She hesitated for 2 seconds before saying, maybe next year. I'll be pretty busy for a while. My smile faded. I forgot Eric's rehabilitation was critical now, and Tina needed to be with him. But will I even see another spring? My condition was flaring up more often. I spent most of the time sitting in a chair, hiding how I felt from her. Tina handed me a glass of grapefruit juice. I remember you used to say you hated spring. Why do you always want to travel in spring now? I tilted my head back, shading my eyes from the bright sun with my hand. Before Tina, I really did hate spring. I was abandoned at an orphanage in spring. Dad said he was getting me cotton candy across the street and never came back. In spring, I was adopted by Eric's family. And again in spring, I was thrown out by them. It seemed like all my misfortunes began in spring. But then, I met Tina in spring. Her eyes, usually hard to read, melted into warmth and intensity, like the sun today. Tina leaned in and kissed me gently. Embraced, we couldn't see each other's expressions. A thought flashed in my mind. I whispered in her ear, Tina, can you love me a little more? It had been a while since we were this peaceful. Felt like the early years of our marriage. She held me tighter, her voice trembling slightly. Okay. I smiled slightly. Would losing me hurt more if you loved me more? I wasn't that gracious. I wanted her to remember me endlessly, to always see the shadow of my departure. Tina's grandpa's birthday came around. We got there early. She helped me out of the car. I'd hurt my ankle falling during a flare-up the other day. How'd it get so bad? She asked casually. Just pulled a ligament, I replied. She frowned a bit. Go rest in the room for now. We'll talk later. I didn't argue. My legs couldn't hold me up. She didn't come to find me that evening. There were many guests. She was probably busy. A servant helped me down the stairs. Through the crowd, I saw Tina and Eric at the entrance. Eric, all in white, sat in a wheelchair greeting guests. Tina was bent down, listening to him with a relaxed smile. They looked like a perfect couple. Meanwhile, the legal husband, seemed like an outsider. I wanted to run away, but I walked over. Tina. I called her from behind. She straightened up, a hint of surprise in her eyes, like she hadn't expected me to come down. She took me from the servant. Is your foot better? Much better, I said. As she looked at me, her grip on my arm tightened. The lively crowd fell silent when they noticed me. Someone spoke. Ben. The greeting was polite but distant, even though everyone knew Tina and I were married. I remember you're kind of Eric's younger brother, right? I gave a polite smile. I did used to live at Eric's place. Someone chimed in, if you're not feeling well, why don't you rest a bit? Tina and Eric can handle things here. I turned to Tina. Is that true? Tina didn't answer for a long time, so long that I wanted to pull my hand away. Feeling my movement, she tightened her grip on my arm. Tina looked at the person across from us. Her voice went a bit cold. No. The other person awkwardly diverted their gaze. Eric's smile froze at the corner of his mouth. He dropped his hand and his face turned a little grim. I gave her a slight smile, deliberately ignoring the resentment and jealousy on her face. Seeing the awkward vibe, someone quickly steered the conversation elsewhere, as if everything was normal. That little episode seemed like it never happened. They talked like nothing was wrong, naturally excluding me. No nasty words, just their looks, attitude, and actions telling me I didn't deserve to be by Tina's side, that I should obediently step aside for Eric. After the party, Tina was supposed to go home with me, but Eric claimed he was unwell. She looked at me, wanting to say something but hesitated. The night breeze scattered my words a little. Go ahead. She leaned in close. I'll be back soon. I gave a casual smile. I had used the same tactics on Tina before. What did she say to me back then? I lay on the bed as Tina, with a serious face, told me, Ben, enough is enough. Eric always seemed to unintentionally yet conveniently steal Tina away from my side. She could never see through Eric's poor acting. She subconsciously trusted Eric wholeheartedly. That night, Tina didn't come back. In the early hours, I received her call. She was silent, but I could hear her breathing. I asked, "Why aren't you saying anything?" "Ben, I'm not coming back tonight. Is he that bad?" Tina's voice had a bit of surprise, like she didn't expect me to ask about Eric. Eric had an allergic reaction to something. He just got out of the emergency room and is still on a drip. My voice was sharp. Don't hospitals have doctors and nurses? Or does Eric's family not have the money for a caregiver? Tina sounded tired. "Ben, it happened in my house." "Is that so?" She didn't say anything else. A lousy excuse. I closed my eyes, suit yourself. Hung up the phone, couldn't sleep a wink. On the third day, Tina came back looking worn out. As she walked in, I was sitting on the couch in our living room, going through our old travel photos. A lot of them, 3 full albums. I always liked capturing our moments together with my camera. I looked at her outfit was the same one from 3 days ago, and the t-shirt underneath was a bit wrinkled too. Seems like she was really dedicated to looking after Eric at the hospital these past 3 days. We sat silently across from each other. I looked down, "You're back." "Yeah." That brief confrontation from nights ago seemed to have passed without a mention. No one brought up Eric again. But some scars cannot be healed just by covering them. I poured a glass of water, handed it to her, and she glanced at the photos on the table, offhandedly asking, "Looking at the old photos again?" Just felt like flipping through them. Suddenly, I spoke up. "I figured out my birthday wish." "What?" "The one you owe me for 2 months. Did you forget?" Tina paused for 2 seconds, gave me a side eye. "No, I haven't forgotten." "Then next month, how about another trip with me? I'll be really busy these days." "But you said you wouldn't be busy for a while." Tina avoided my gaze. Suddenly I guessed. If it's not work, then it must be about Eric. I probed with a little heat. "Breaking your word again?" "Busy with work." She took a deep breath. "Enough, Ben. There's plenty of time for a trip in the future. A few months won't matter." My mind drifted. Time? Huh? But I don't have much left. Soon I might only be sitting in a wheelchair or lying in bed. My throat felt a bit dry. "Not even a week." Her voice softened. "Wait for me a few months." I whispered, "Got it. You always make me wait." Time and again. Tina knew I was upset, so she kissed the corner of my mouth to make up. "Ben, I have to go to the US for a few months." "For what?" She didn't answer right away but continued to kiss me. After a while, slightly breathless, she replied, "Eric's leg. There's a big chance for rehab over there. A specialist contacted us. I need to meet him personally." Pushed her away. That kiss wasn't an apology. It was her making a request. "Tina, do you still know I'm your husband?" Her tone was earnest. "Just one last time." I stared at her. Her bangs falling over her eyes kept me from seeing her expression. We stayed silent for a long time, and a lot went through my mind. 6 years of time, and in the end, it's enough for one final word: fine. None of it mattered anymore. My time to leave was coming too. Tina left hastily with Eric. Even their luggage was collected by her assistant. She came back only briefly to see me one last time before turning around to leave. In the end, all she left me was a view of her back. So this is what giving up feels like. Tina didn't know, but before they left, Eric came to see me. "What do you want?" I held the door, clearly not wanting to let him in. Sitting in his wheelchair, he grinned, face full of a winner's delight. "Ben, not gonna invite me in?" Eric called my name warmly, still as fake as ever. "There's no one else here, no need to pretend. Besides, I'm not obliged to welcome uninvited guests." Eric's eyes roved over me. What if I said Tina sent me? I didn't pick up his words. Since he woke up, the times we met were few, but every single time, his talk revolved around Tina. Eric's smile didn't falter. "Tina said she doesn't come home often. Must be lonely living in such a big place on your own. Honestly, if it weren't for that car accident I had 6 years ago, I should have been the man of this house." I leaned against the door, speaking calmly, "It's a pity then, that the person standing here today is me. As long as I'm not divorced from Tina, you can forget about stepping inside this house. After all, people always frown upon the third wheel." Eric's face showed a flicker of spite, but then he quickly masked it. "So what? You?" I interrupted her, leaned in, and said coldly, "You're scared." "What?" I smiled back at her. I said, "You're scared. Eric, you don't need to put on a front or act all high and mighty in front of me. If you were 100% sure, you wouldn't be here right now." Eric's expression darkened, but only for a moment. The one who isn't loved is the side chick. "Wait and see, Ben. I'll be the one who wins again this time. Honestly, I won't win. But from the moment I decided to let Tina go completely, I also knew I wouldn't lose. I just can't stand Eric's smug, self-assured face. After Tina and Eric went to the US, she sent me messages every day. Because of the time difference, she'd often message me in the middle of the night. I read every one but never responded. She didn't call either. She knew I was mad. It was always like that. Tina was never great at comforting anyone. Or maybe she just wasn't good at comforting me. She probably thought, as usual, that I'd come around and make things right. The night before leaving, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the balcony in the cold all night. I remembered when Tina first decided to marry me. A lot of people she knew were skeptical. No wedding, no guests, no blessings. I didn't fit into her circle. Yet Tina introduced me with pride, shielding me from all the gossip, giving me nothing but care and respect. She was quiet and reserved, definitely not the romantic type. But she knew how to bring little surprises into our married life sometimes. She was like a shooting star lighting up my otherwise gloomy 22 years of life, at least until Eric woke up. Sadly, stars only pass through your world briefly. What's meant to go can't be forced to stay. I left the home we'd lived in for 6 years. The day I left, the weather was great, a bright sunny day. I didn't take anything, just my papers. The ring I'd worn for 6 years? I left it atop the divorce papers on the bedside table. Tina would see it right away. Truth is, I didn't spend long deciding to sign. I just wanted to leave cleanly. I figured, this lifetime we won't meet again. It's been 10 days since coming to the US. After getting Eric settled, Tina went to the company's branch here. To be fair, she didn't exactly lie to Ben. With the company expanding overseas, even without the need for Eric's rehab, she would have had to travel. Distracted, she worked, checking her phone often. For 2 days, something in her gut kept telling her something was wrong. Almost 10 days now, and Ben hadn't contacted her or replied to her Instagram messages. That wasn't like him. They'd never gone beyond 5 days of silent treatment, even during fights. Once Ben cooled off, he'd usually come to reconcile and she'd follow his lead. This time, Ben's odd behavior left her uneasy and even a bit confused. She had her assistant back home check up on Ben. Gone? What does that mean? Tina was stunned. While cleaning, the housekeeper found Mrs. S. wedding ring on the nightstand. And some papers? A divorce agreement. Tina froze in disbelief. No way Ben could just leave her. She booked the earliest flight back home. When she returned, nothing seemed to be missing in the room, not even Ben's warmth from the sheets. Only now there was that ring and the divorce agreement. Can't be. Ben's just testing me. She called Ben's phone, but the voice repeatedly said the number was no longer in service. In her 29 years, she rarely felt so helpless. She searched everywhere Ben might go, but nothing. Real panic began to set in. "Oh right, ma'am. While sorting the closet, I found an unfinished bottle of pills and some photos in Mr. S. clothes. This medicine doesn't look like the usual stuff we have at home." Tina took the pill bottle and absent-mindedly set the photos aside, feeling uneasier. She called her friend Jenny, a doctor at the first hospital. "Riluzole? Isn't that for ALS?" "Tina, who's using it? That disease is one of the hardest to bear." Tina's mind went blank. She recalled all Ben's odd behaviors in the past 6 months. The weight loss, the heaviness in his eyes, even those inexplicable falls. The pill bottle in her hand crumpled as she trembled. "It's Ben. The other end of the call went silent for what felt like an eternity. Tina, there's a specialist at the second hospital. I'll help you get in contact. Don't give up hope yet. Though it's incurable, focus on making the most of the time left. Tina felt numb, hardly able to breathe. Jenny's words seemed foreign. She felt drained, slumping onto the bed, but she still had no idea where Ben was. Her nose stung as she reached for the photos on the bed. In hindsight, it was silly. 6 anniversary photos from 6 years of marriage. They were like a tradition. The pictures were hung above their bed but were now dusty. She hadn't noticed when Ben had taken them down. She flipped the photos over and paused. Every photo had Ben's neat handwriting on the back, and she'd never noticed before. Year 1. I finally have a home. Turns out I can be this happy too. Year 2. Spring is here. Tina and I went to many places I always wanted to go. I think I'm starting to like spring. Year 3. Tina asked me what I wished for. I said I hope we don't get divorced. I want to be with her forever. Year 4. I want a baby. Doesn't matter if they look like her or me. But Tina always says there's no rush. Fair enough, we'll wait until our careers are more stable. Year 5. I think we can stay happy forever. Year 6. Eric woke up. Tina read through Ben's words one by one. For a long time, tears welled up in her eyes as she trembled uncontrollably. She should have known the reason Ben had been so silent for the past 6 months. Ben, where are you? She was too confident and arrogant. Thought Ben would never leave her. Choking back her tears, someone suddenly came to mind. Mike, the only friend Ben kept in touch with regularly. She dialed his number urgently. It's Tina. I'm looking for Ben. Why call me for Ben? Don't you know where your own husband is? Mike scoffed. We had a small argument and now I can't find him. He laughed disdainfully. You sure it's just a little argument? Have some shame, Tina. If you can't get over your first love, then stop messing with Ben. It's not like that. Her defense was weak. Not like that? Then why are you at the hospital every day since Eric woke up? Have you seen Ben more than 1/10 as much as Eric in half a year? Tina was speechless. Stop with the excuses, Mike mocked. Tina, quit pretending you care. If you thought of Ben's feelings even a little, you'd never have gotten involved with Eric. If you two are as innocent as you claim, it wouldn't matter if Eric was paralyzed or dead. It has nothing to do with you. Tina felt a growing panic that Ben might never come back. I'll explain Eric's situation to Ben myself. Where is he? And that's how you ask for help. Mike was about to hang up when Tina pleaded desperately. Please, I'm begging you. Tell me where Ben is. Do you know he's seriously ill? This can't wait. I know he might not want to see me now, but tell him I'm sorry and ask him to come home. I'm waiting for him. Mike remained firm. I don't know where Ben is. If he chose to leave, it's because he wanted to be far from you. Instead of bothering Ben, maybe ask Eric's family what they did to him. A knot formed in Tina's stomach. What could Eric's family have done to Ben? She only knew Ben had been taken in by Eric's family from the orphanage, but had never delved into his past. Suddenly, things she'd overlooked seemed to surface. She had someone thoroughly investigate Ben's history. She didn't know how she reached the last page of the report. Blood rushed to Tina's head, and she knocked everything off the table. No wonder. Eric's family never treated Ben well. His existence seemed to serve another person entirely. She had thought Ben was just upset about her past with Eric, blamed herself for being selfish. How must Ben have felt every time she chose to be with Eric, chose to trust Eric? He must have been so disappointed that he didn't even tell her he was ill. Even though he feared death, he chose to bear it all alone. What had she done? Tina went to visit Eric in the US. Tina, why'd you come back without saying anything? Eric greeted, but Tina fixed her red eyes on him. Have you met with Ben? Eric's smile froze. Why bring this up out of nowhere? Tina pressed on. What did you say to Ben? Just catching up, he answered, visibly tense. Anger rose within Tina. Eric, did you ever really consider Ben your brother? His face hardened, his smile strained. What do you mean? Tina, I did treat him like my brother, but you saw, he didn't appreciate Eric's family's kindness. Is that so? She threw a stack of papers at him. His face grew paler as he frantically brushed them aside. No, it's not like that. Ben faked this to trick you. Don't let him fool you. I investigated this myself, Tina said. Eric looked at her, defeated. And so what? Without Eric's family taking him in from the orphanage, giving him food, who knows if he'd be alive today? He grasped her arm. Is it wrong to pursue my happiness? Tina, I really like you. It should be us together, not Ben, who's nobody. Eric's harsh words pierced Tina's heart like needles. Rage surged within her. She pulled away from him. I found something else, Tina said coolly. Before we broke up, you were already messing with another senior. Weren't you? Eric fell silent. He suddenly laughed. Are you any better? If you really loved Ben that much, you'd have seen this by now. You can't say you never wavered. Mike's words echoed in Tina's mind, and she realized he was right. She wasn't blameless. You're right, she whispered, her voice raw, her eyes red. We're the guilty ones. Eric lunged at her in a fit of rage, but he lost control and fell to the floor. Boiling water from a nearby kettle spilled all over him. A sharp scream pierced the entire ward. The nurse rushed in, and Tina left without looking back. She didn't plan on letting Eric's family off the hook that easily. Friends called to persuade her. Are you really going to make everyone suffer for Ben? She didn't listen. It was as if she could atone and make amends this way. In less than a year, Eric's family went bankrupt. Now they're like rats everyone wants to get rid of. Eric's leg wouldn't stand anymore due to another accident. Kneeling in the rain, he cried and begged Tina. Tina, I was wrong. I apologize to you, to Ben. Please save me. Let Eric's family be. His father tried to salvage the company crisis and wanted Eric to take the fall for the company's financial misdeeds. Tina, looking down at him, said, This ending suits you perfectly. Ben, do you feel satisfied? I returned to there. This is where I was born, truly my hometown. I got in touch with Mike. He's probably the only person I still want a connection with in this world. We have a bond, I guess. We both came from the same orphanage and worked at the same company. Got close after learning about this at work, becoming friends who could talk about anything. Later, he got married and moved back. He was luckier than me. He found a great adoptive family. His foster parents loved him very much. He married a wonderful woman. His wife's family is well off and involved in politics with some influence. That's probably why Tina hasn't found me. I told Mike about my condition. He was both angry and heartbroken, holding me while crying all night. Why did you keep this from me for so long? I wiped his tears away, probably because I didn't want the only person I still cared about to be burdened by my sadness. That would make me more upset than the illness. Mike stayed with me for almost a year. My illness deteriorated faster than I thought. By late autumn to early winter, my hands and feet were completely immobile. I could only lie in bed all day. I thought I'd never see her again, but turned out I did see her one last time. Tina found me. One morning, I heard Mike's angry voice at the door. You still have the nerve to show up here. My husband is inside. Tina's voice sounded pained and tired. Ben has nothing to do with you anymore. Get lost. You're not welcome here. I'm here to take Ben home. Don't you understand human language? Do I have to get someone to kick you out? Tina looked a bit embarrassed, but she stood her ground at the door. I'll leave once I have Ben. When I heard her voice again, I was indifferent. Mike let her in. Tina, at this point, why are you being so stubborn? You can't fix anything. She looked stunned seeing me. Sure, I must look awful now. She staggered toward me, with a look of unprecedented helplessness on her face. Tina's eyes were red as she knelt by my bed, clasping my hand tightly and bowing her head. The palm of my hand was wet, and I heard unabashed sobs. Ben, I was wrong. Don't leave me. Let's go home, please. No, I answered without hesitation. Ben, I'm sorry. I know everything now. Really? Tina looked at me with burning intensity. Didn't you say you wanted to see the snow in Hokkaido? Get better and I'll take you there. I gave a slight smile. But Tina, I don't care anymore. Don't care for your kindness now. don't care for your belated affection. I once tried finding any trace of your love for me. But now, seeing you so full of feelings for me, I don't care anymore. Because I don't love you anymore. Ben, let me stay and take care of you. No need, you should go. Ben, we're married. I said coldly, I'll say it again, no need. You saw the divorce papers, right? Tina's face fell, and she lowered her head. I don't agree. If you want me to leave peacefully, then sign it. Her mouth trembled. Her eyes filled with pain. I looked at her calmly. Do you remember you owe me a birthday wish? That's my only wish now. Tina laughed at herself. Ben, do you hate me this much? I don't hate you. Without love, there can't be hate. Fine. Tina's voice was sincere. I promise you. But let me stay. Ben, I just want to be with you. You should go. Mike couldn't stand it anymore and spoke up suddenly. Ben told you to leave. Why are you still lingering? Are you intentionally making it hard for him to get better? Tina's face went pale, and I turned to not look at her. I could feel my cold expression hurt her, but I didn't care. She forced a smile. I'll go then. Rest up. I stopped her. You won't break your promise this time, will you? The person in front of me froze slightly, her voice soft. I won't. After Tina left, Mike took me to another place that same day. Not long after, my condition worsened again. I started having trouble swallowing. Talking became difficult. Mike sat by my bed, feeding me, looking at me with concern. Ben, maybe we should listen to the doctor and put a tube in. No, Mike, no invasive treatments for me. Mike cried. But, promise me. He wiped his tears with his sleeve, reluctantly nodding. Mike still routinely massaged my hands and feet, even though it didn't help anymore. After massages, Mike tucked me in. I looked at him, my eyes a bit tender. Mike, I'd like to see our old photos. Mike quickly brought the photos, all neatly arranged in 2 large albums. We lay side by side, talking about the past, full of nostalgia. I turned my head to look at him with difficulty. Sorry, Mike. We promised to travel the world together, and now I'm breaking that promise. And thank you. Mike hugged me and broke down crying again. The painful truth is we were both powerless. Mike closed the photo album, looking at me sadly. Ben, is there anywhere else you want to go? I gazed at the sunset outside the window, thinking, so beautiful. I forced a small smile. Let's go somewhere where it's spring all year round. I won't make it to next spring, so I'd like to see spring one more time in advance. Even though winter had set in, the weather here was still pleasantly warm during the day. I really enjoyed the feeling of the warm sun on my skin. At first, we temporarily rented a place as an Airbnb over there. Mike would push my wheelchair to the park every morning to watch the seagulls. These birds weren't afraid of people. Maybe it was because I showed up so often. Occasionally, a few seagulls would land by my feet, nuzzling against me. Mike held my hand tighter. Ben, being a seagull doesn't sound so bad. Watching flocks of seagulls sweep across the sky, I remembered asking Mike to scatter my ashes at sea. Mike, I changed my mind. I'm actually pretty scared of being alone. So after I'm gone, bury me in a cemetery. That way I won't be lonely. I could at least have some company nearby. Mike didn't say anything for a long time, but I heard him choking up behind me. Okay. I had Mike take a few photos of me. I had lost a lot of weight by then. In the pictures, I sat in a wheelchair, surrounded by seagulls, my face looking a bit more alive. I thought back to all the places we visited in Kunming. All the scenes were clear in my mind. Mike, being alive is really nice. 2 months later, I could no longer speak, and breathing was getting harder by the day. We moved out of our Airbnb. At the end of January, in the new year, I died of respiratory failure. I was so close to seeing the real spring again. When Tina heard about Ben again, it was already too late. She only saw a cold tombstone. Mike hated her for it. Did Ben leave any final words? Mike clenched his fists, then suddenly grabbed her collar, his eyes filled with cold fury. What do you want to hear? How hurt he was? How sad? How resentful? Or do you want to know how much he suffered in the end? Sorry, Tina. By the time Ben left, he couldn't talk at all. Each word from Mike was like a knife carving into Tina's heart. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Tina lowered her head, struggling to breathe, as though the wind stung her eyes. If only she could have left with Ben, that would have been nice. Mike relaxed his grip, turning away, his body tense. Tina, Ben originally wanted to be buried at sea. Do you know why he changed his mind? Mike's voice was soft. Ben said he was afraid of being lonely. You never let Ben truly become a part of your world. Mike's words sounded like a final judgment for Tina. She remembered countless nights over their 6-year marriage, Ben sitting in the light, waiting for her. She remembered every time Ben left her presence, the light fading from his eyes. Lastly, she saw that final gaze as she left for the United States. It looked like despair, like a goodbye. Tears are supposed to be salty, but why did they taste so bitter in her mouth? Back home, she pulled out the divorce papers she had set aside for so long. Ben's handwriting was neat and straightforward, with no trace of hesitation. Her trembling hand signed her name. Ben had been gone for 3 months. One day, passing a park near home, she met an elderly couple Ben had once helped. The old lady asked her about Ben. Tina replied softly, barely audibly, "Ben? He went on a trip." The woman seemed disappointed. "Well, when Ben gets back, could you ask him when he'll bring me the osmanthus cake he promised?" Tina almost broke down, barely escaping in embarrassment. At home, the overwhelming sadness and regret swept over her like a flood. She still couldn't come to terms with Ben's death. Tina fell seriously ill. When her assistant noticed she hadn't been to work for 4 days, they reached out to Tina's friends. When the door opened, Tina was slumped against a wall near the foyer. Her face was ghostly pale, drenched in cold sweat. Sarah, her friend, was startled and rushed to help her, the heat from Tina's body causing her to pull back her hand. Sweat had soaked through Tina's shirt. Who knows how long she'd been sitting there. Sarah checked to see if she was still breathing. Thankfully, she was. "Tina, why didn't you go to a hospital with such a fever? Are you just gonna sit here waiting to die?" Tina, delirious from the fever, mumbled, "Ben, you're back?" Sarah, exasperated, responded, "Don't go losing it now." Tina, undeterred, continued, "Ben, is the ginger tea ready? You always made it for my fevers." Sarah's patience wore thin. "Get a grip. Ben's been gone for 3 months now." Tina seemed to finally understand, murmuring, "I forgot, you left me long ago." She suddenly collapsed to the floor, crying uncontrollably. Seeing her friend's tears, Sarah was taken aback, her resolve breaking. Until today, she hadn't realized the extent of the impact Ben's death had on her. When Tina woke up again, she saw nothing but the stark white ceiling above her. Sarah immediately started trying to reason with her. "Tina, he's gone, you know? Hurting yourself won't bring him back." Tina's voice was empty. "I know, because she knew this better than anyone. She chose the pain over facing reality. She couldn't pull herself from a world without Ben." Sarah was silent, eventually urging, "You should try to live well. On the path beyond life, he probably wouldn't want to see you like this." Tina covered her eyes, tears sliding bitterly down to the corners of her mouth. "Yeah, Ben was so stubborn. Once he made up his mind, he never looked back. Just as resolute as he was when he loved her, the very same when he completely walked away." After being discharged, Tina found out where Ben had last stayed in Kunming. She began watching the seagulls day after day, just like Ben did. The last world in Ben's eyes was like this. Tina went back to work. Everything was just the same as before. The only difference? She never stayed overnight at the office anymore. No matter how late it was, she always came home. "Ben, I'm back." It was quiet. No response. But she didn't mind. She hadn't thrown away any of Ben's things. They were all still there. Yet, somehow, Ben's presence in the room was fading a little more each day. Maybe because he wasn't there anymore. She lay on the bed. Tears silently slid down her cheek. "It's okay," she thought to herself. "Ben, this time, it's my turn to wait for you." Bonus content. Does ALS cause a lot of pain in the later stages? What? The doctor didn't seem to hear me, so I repeated myself. Half a year after Ben passed, I found his primary doctor. We talked for a long time and he was very detailed. No effective treatments. The medication just buys time. Due to individual differences, the disease progresses and manifests differently for each person. But what's certain is that whatever treatment, the pain ALS patients endure in the later stages is unimaginable. That day, I cried in front of someone else for the first time. After that, I did my own research. I broke down completely. How is this disease any different from ancient torture? Ben was diagnosed half a month after Eric woke up. What was I doing then? I was busy with work stuff, comforting Eric, helping him with rehab, and after that, I was rarely home, rarely spending time with Ben. Often, I'd leave him in a hurry because Eric called. I noticed the sadness and dimness in Ben's eyes every time, but I didn't have the time to think about what those feelings meant. Or maybe I just didn't want to think about it. Having Ben by my side was enough. Eric and I were a thing of the past. At first, I stayed with Eric out of guilt. Ben didn't know, but I was partly to blame for Eric's accident. We had broken up after an argument, and he crashed his car while drunk. So, when Eric wanted me to be with him for a year of rehab after he woke up, I gave in and agreed. Sometimes when I was with Eric, I'd get a little nostalgic for a moment. But my feelings for Ben were genuine. I never planned on divorcing Ben. That's the truth. I didn't fall for Ben because he looked like Eric. To me, they didn't resemble each other at all. When I first saw Ben, there was a strong stubbornness in his eyes that hit me hard. That's when I fell for him. I thought what Ben cared about was my past with Eric. Ben always went along with me in everything, and I thought he'd never leave. I wish I'd been more thoughtful. Maybe things would have been different. In the end, I just didn't care for Ben enough. I spent nearly a year trying to find Ben. He didn't want to see me. To not disturb him while he was sick, I agreed to leave. I didn't know that'd be the last time I'd see him. When I finally found Ben, all that was left was a cold gravestone. Ben's smile on the tombstone was relaxed and calm. I couldn't remember the last time I saw him smile like that. Mike picked a really nice spot. I think Ben would have liked it too. I visit Ben every week. I can sit there in silence all day, just watching the sun rise and set. Sometimes, I swear I can still feel like he's right there beside me. One day, while tidying up, I found 2 huge photo albums in the corner. I knew we took a lot of photos when we traveled, but I rarely looked at them. Ben flipped through them a lot, though. One picture was left out. It was our last trip together. On the back, Ben had written, "Next time, let's see the ocean." My heart ached. I remembered the last time he asked if we could travel again and the faint hope in his eyes. But I never said yes. In the second March after Ben passed, I went to see the ocean alone. I understood why Ben wanted to come here. The ocean was beautiful. Everywhere I looked was like a perfect picture. Ben, spring is here.